Dustin Johnson is the defending champion. Does it mean much? We'll talk about that coming up next. But first, we're going to hear from Dustin Johnson out at Bethpage.
Well, it's going to be tough. You know, the Barclays, obviously I'm glad to be defending champion. But, you know, it's at a totally different golf course than it was last year. But golf course is in good shape. It's going to play tough. The rough's pretty thick. And, you know, the fairways are pretty narrow, just like they were in the U.S. Open. So it's going to be a good test of golf. And, you know, the FedEx Cup that's what it's all about. I got to have 3 good weeks if I want to make it to the Tour Championship. So,
question starting in the back with Tom.
Dustin, speaking about the U.S. Open, how do the conditions on specifically the 13th hole in the back nine, the par 5, how do those conditions differ now as opposed to when it was all, you know, during the 09 Open when it was pretty wet out here? And is that a green light for you?
It's pretty wet out there right now. You know, the fairways aren't rolling. You know, it's playing long. And 13, I think we're actually playing further back than we were in the U.S. Open. If I remember correctly, I think we played the up tee.
And what about the 17th hole? What's your strategy on that? Are there any hidden dangers there? Or,
17?
Yeah, the par 3.
I just hit it on the green. That's my strategy. Well, you got to get on the right level. You know, if the pit flag's on the left, you want to be on the left side. If it's on the right, you want to be down on the right. But, you know, most of these greens, you don't want to really hit it long. If you keep it short of the flag and you're chipping, because most of the greens run back to front. So if you're chipping up the hill, you always got a chance to get it close. You know, when you short side yourself and you got a downhill shot, you know, it's tougher because the greens are fairly quick.
Okay, question right here.
Speaking of 17, they've got a lot of tents around there in grandstand. Can you envision sort of the atmosphere, say on Sunday, if everything's on the line, you come to that hole?
Yeah, I think it'll be good. In the U.S. Open, I think they even had more grandstands from what I remember. And 17 was the hole was really loud. It was fun. You know, people up and down both sides and grandstands down both sides. So, you know, I remember that hole being a lot of fun, but, you know, when you're playing up here in New York, it's usually, if you're coming down the last few holes, the fans are out there, and it's pretty loud, and it's a lot of fun.
Back in the back.
Dustin, does winning 2 FedEx Cup events help you significantly in winning a third, or do you think that third time's coming with the playoffs?
I mean, it's hard to say. You know, I play well at this time of the year usually, so, you know, I enjoy the FedEx Cup. I like the playoffs. You know, it's at a, you know, kind of, you know, it's that time of the year you play well, and then, you know, this is time where you really need to play well. So, you know, I kind of like that, and, you know, I've had a lot of success the last few years in the playoffs, and hopefully I can continue that this year.
Jason?
I just wanted to get your thoughts on yesterday's news out of Augusta.
You know, I think it's great. You know, it's good for golf, for sure. You know, Augusta does so much for growing the game of golf, and I think, you know, this is just another step towards, you know, what Augusta is. You know, it's great for them. You know, I think they've caught a lot of heat for it. So, you know, I think it's good. It's definitely good for golf, and you know, I like it.
Mike?
Dustin, this course is long, crooked stick's long. How much do you think that will impact the playoffs this year? You know, maybe give you and Bubba and some of the longer hitters an advantage, you think?
I mean, this golf course, you know, longer hitters have a little bit of an advantage, but you still got to hit it in the fairway, because, you know, if we drive it in the rough, it's still hard to get it to the green on some of the longer holes. So, you know, it's whoever's going to drive it the straightest and the furthest is who's going to win. I mean, you know, it's you know, the rough is very penal. So, you know, it's but you definitely have an advantage being a longer hitter, that's for sure.
Dustin, can you explain, from your perspective, how important are the playoffs? Because you're right in between, a major and the Ryder Cup, but still it's something that's kind of brought out the best in you. How do you get up for it, and sort of why do you get up for it?
Well, FedEx raises a lot of money for the playoffs, so it's hard not to get up for them. I'm always excited. Especially, you want to make it to the Tour Championship and obviously win the FedEx Cup. That's a nice check in the pocket. So that's how I get up for it. It's great, and I don't know how you couldn't when you're playing for that kind of cheese.
Brendan?
Dustin, how chaotic was last year at Plainfield for you guys, both on the course, and I remember even you just kind of jumped in your rental car with your girlfriend and sped out. I mean, how chaotic was it getting out of town, especially after that?
Well, NetJets, I was flying home with, I think, Ricky and Camilo. It was just like 6 of us, and they grounded all their planes, but since I was in the last group and I ended up winning, they extended their ground a little bit longer so I could get out of there. So it was pretty chaotic. I mean, I went straight as soon as I did the closing ceremonies on the green. I mean, I jumped in the car and straight to the airport to get home. Finished on Saturday. I mean, it was really nice because we got home Saturday afternoon. The weather was great and down in Florida. And, I got to spend 4 days at home before I went up to Boston. So that was really nice. Yeah, for sure. We were cutting it close, and the NetJets, they didn't want to let us leave, but they did. Just because the conditions didn't get bad till a little bit later, so they didn't come in quite as fast as they thought. But it was getting pretty iffy when we were about to take off.
Doug?
I think I took care of it. I think I just need to have a solid next few weeks. If I play well the next 2 weeks, I would hope that I'm definitely in consideration. But I think I've had a good year, other than I didn't play for 3 months. But hopefully, which captain knows that, and he'll make the right decision. He's so. No, I don't think so. I mean, I think there's 4 spots open. I don't see how, people have already made it. I think he's going to make his decision. Obviously, he's got guys in mind who he thinks, he's going to pick, but, that could change in the next couple of weeks. But, he probably already has the guys he's going to pick, I would say. And, these next couple of weeks maybe could change his mind. But, most of the guys have played well all year. And, I've played pretty solid all year long. And, I think I'd be a great asset to the team, and hopefully I'll get picked.
Mike?
Given the time off that you did have, do you feel fresher now than maybe previous times?
No, I mean, for me, it doesn't. No. I feel the same as I always do this time of year. I'm ready to play golf, and I might have been fresher going into those 2 weeks, Memorial and Memphis and U.S. Open, but that was just because I had 3 months off or whatever, 2.5 months, I was ready to play golf. You get bored sitting at home, believe me. It is boring.
In the back?
Bubba was in here before talking about the greens, said if they get firmer, they could get tough, but overall he called the course playable. How do you think the greens are rolling out there? Are they rolling to your liking?
Yeah, the greens are rolling great. They're at a good speed. They are a little soft, but, like you said, it's very playable. Fairways are soft, so, the ball's not, the ball lands in the fairway, it's staying in the fairway. So, that's good, especially for me. I like when the ball stays in the fairway.
All right, Dustin, best of luck to you this week. Thanks for coming in.
All right, well, Tripp, we heard Dustin say it. He needs a captain's pick for a Ryder Cup spot. He finished 15th on the Ryder Cup points list. Should he get a captain's pick?
I definitely think he should be in the consideration. And if you look at the players that are probably on that short list, you would say it would be Hunter Mahan. Of course, Steve Stricker, Jim Furyk, and Ricky Fowler, in my opinion, are going to be picked. And that leaves Brandt Snedeker and Dustin Johnson, Hunter Mahan. In my opinion, I think the team needs a player like Dustin Johnson, a bomber who you can pair with a shorter, consistent player like a Jason Duffner or a Zach Johnson. That type of player, I think, makes a great team and a great addition to the team, putting Dustin Johnson on it.
Do you think he might be kidding himself to believe there's actually 4 spots, 4 captain's picks still available?
Oh, I think he knows clearly that 2 of them are gone. I think Jim Furyk and Steve Stricker are going to be on that team just because their value to the team, their experience. Ricky Fowler had a great 2010 Ryder Cup. He was a great addition in the team room. He was kind of the clown that kept the team light. Davis Love loves him, so I think Ricky Fowler's definitely on there, but again, I think Dustin Johnson would be a valuable pick to this team.
How is he going to fare this time out at Bethpage in the Barclays? He's such a long hitter. We heard him say that he does well on small greens. Is he going to make the most of them?
Yeah, Dustin Johnson can play. Well, he can play difficult golf courses well. He's, like I said, had a chance to win a U.S. Open, had a chance to win the Open Championship. I never count Dustin Johnson out in any tournament, especially if he's healthy and he's driving the ball anywhere near the fairway. He's going to be dangerous.
Someone else you can really never count out is Phil Mickelson. A lot of people thought that